Recording in progress.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all here, and I apologize to any Zazen purists for the extended body scan today. Um, it was intentional because the part of the Fukan Zazenji which we're talking about spends a fair amount of the 2 pages on issues related to what you do with your body. And the body is what you do with your body, of course, affects your mind, which is why Dogen emphasizes this to some degree. But of course, what's going on in your mind affects your body as well. And the mind and the body don't really recognize that separation. We make that separation. But before we get into that, I would like to just comment a little bit about what we're doing here, talking about Zazen, using the Fukan Zazenji as a text. I was walking around Oberlin this morning in this unseasonably warm day and with a pleasant breeze out of the south. And everything was extraordinarily peaceful. There were a couple other walkers. There were Girl Scouts in front of the coffee shop selling cookies. There were people coming and going about their business. And everything was extraordinarily peaceful. And this in stark contrast to the news feeds during the past week. Unless you've been ice fishing in the Yukon for the past week, you've probably been exposed to stories and images from Ukraine, where the story of aggression, violence against populations, suffering, displacement, and mass casualties plays out once again. And I dare say this story is particularly newsworthy and has captured the attention of the world in part because it involves mostly white people many of whom speak English. These stories, which have occurred again and again through history, through our lifetimes, usually involve people of color who speak another language. But these stories speak to us very directly. So what does Zazen have to do with that? I think there's a misperception sometimes that meditation practice is a way of forming a cocoon around yourself and protecting yourself from the suffering in the world. isolating yourself. But I think Zazen actually is a means of heightening awareness. Heightening awareness and at the same time modulating our response. So that as we carry the Zazen into the world, we can feel the pain, but we hope react in a way that is more skillful. So, with that in mind, and I think another point is that Zazen occurs within the context of Buddhist practice generally. So it occurs within the context of ongoing repentance, of ongoing refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and an ongoing vow to avoid doing harm ourselves, to be of benefit in some way or another, and to regard all beings as kindred spirits, even those who are severely deluded. So getting back to the text now, I'd like to read this again because I think repetition is helpful. But this is a different translation than the one I read last week. This is a translation from the Zen Center of Los Angeles. Originally, the way is complete and universal. How can we distinguish practice from enlightenment? The vehicle of reality is in the self. Why should we waste our efforts trying to attain it? Still more, the whole body is free from dust. Why should we believe in a means to sweep it away? The way is never separated from where we are right now. Why should we wander here and there to practice? And yet, if there is the slightest deviation, you will be as far from the way as heaven is from earth. If adverse or favorable conditions arise to you, even in a small degree, you will lose your mind in confusion. Even if you are proud of your understanding, are enlightened in abundance, and obtain the power of wisdom to glimpse the ground of Buddhahood, even if you gain the way, clarify the mind, resolve to pierce heaven, this is only strolling on the border of the Buddha way. You are still, almost always, lacking the vivid way of emancipation. Moreover, consider Shakyamuni Buddha, who was enlightened from birth. To this day, you can see the traces of his sitting in the straight posture for 6 years, and Bodhidharma, who transmitted the mind seal. Even now, you can hear the fame of his facing the wall for 9 years. These ancient sages practiced in the way. How can people of today refrain from practice? Therefore, cease studying words and following letters. Learn to step back, turning the light inwards, illuminating the self. Doing so, your body and mind will drop off naturally, and original self will manifest. If you wish to attain suchness, practice suchness immediately. Now, for Zazen, a quiet room is best. Eat and drink moderately. Let go of all associations and put all affairs aside. Do not think of either good or evil. Do not be concerned with either right or wrong. Put aside the operation of your intellect, volition, and consciousness. Stop considering things with memory, imagination, and contemplation. Do not seek to become a Buddha. To be Buddha has nothing to do with the forms of sitting or lying down. Usually, a thick mat is put on the floor where you sit, and a zafu placed on it. You sit full lotus or half lotus. Your clothing should be loose but neat. Then put your right palm on your left foot and your left palm on your right palm. The tips of your thumbs should be lightly touching. Sit upright, leaning neither to the left nor right, neither forward nor backward. Your ears should be in line with your shoulders. Your nose should be in line with your navel. Place your tongue against the roof of your mouth. Close your lips and jaw. Always keep your eyes open. Breathe quietly through your nose, and having regulated your posture, exhale completely and take a deep breath. Sway your body from left to right a few times. Sit stably in samadhi. Think of not thinking. How do you think of not thinking? Beyond thinking. This is the essential way of Zazen. The Zazen which I am talking about is not step-by-step meditation. It is simply the Dharma gate of peace and comfort. It is the practice enlightenment of the ultimate way. In doing Zazen, the koan manifests itself. It cannot be ensnared. When you grasp this, you are like a dragon with water or a tiger in the mountains. You must know that true Dharma manifests itself in Zazen, and the dullness and distraction drop away. When you rise from sitting, move your body slowly and stand up calmly. Do not move abruptly. You should see that to transcend both ordinary people and sages, and to die sitting or standing depends upon the power of Zazen. Moreover, your discriminating mind cannot understand how Buddhas and patriarchs taught their students with a finger, a pole, a needle, or a mallet, and how they transmitted the way with a hasu, a fist, a staff, or by shouting. Needless to say, these actions cannot be understood by practicing to attain superhuman powers. These actions come from the practice which is prior to discriminating mind. Therefore, do not consider whether you are clever or stupid, and do not think of whether you are superior or inferior. When you practice wholeheartedly, it is truly the practice of the way. Practice enlightenment cannot be defiled. Making the effort to obtain the way is itself the manifestation of the way in your daily life. The Buddhas and sages, both in this world and other worlds, in India and China, preserved the Buddha seal in the same way and expressed the way freely. They just practiced sitting and were protected by Zazen. Although their characters were diverse, each of them practiced the way of Zazen wholeheartedly. There is no reason to leave your own seat at home and take a meaningless trip to the dusty places of other countries. If you make a false step, then you will miss the way, even though it is before your eyes. You have already been given a human body which is vital, so do not spend your time wastefully. Since you are endowed with the essential functioning of the Buddha way, why pursue worthless pleasures that are like sparks from a flint? Furthermore, your body is like a drop of dew on a blade of grass. Your life is like a flash of lightning. Your body will disappear soon. Your life will be lost in an instant. You, honored practitioner, after learning in a partial way, like the blind people who touched various parts of the elephant, please do not be scared by the real dragon. Devote yourself to the way which indicates reality directly. Respect those who realize their self and no longer seek anything outside. Be in accord with the Buddha's Bodhi. Succeed to the sage's samadhi. If you practice suchness continuously, you will be suchness. The treasure house will open of itself, and you will be able to use it at will. So last week we discussed the part of the Fukan Zazenji where Bodha introduces the topic and tries to persuade people that Zazen is for everyone and is good and cannot be dismissed, appealing to the examples of Bodhidharma and Buddha. And in this part, the middle part of the Fukan Zazenji kind of goes into particulars with unusual detail about how you're supposed to position your body. Now, the Dogen indicates that one should sit in a full lotus or half lotus position. It's important to remember that at the time he was speaking and to the individuals he was speaking to, they had spent much of their lives sitting on the floor. We generally don't sit on the floor unless we're desperate. Sometimes at an airport you sit on the floor because there's no place else to sit, or at least no place where you can be away from the TV set. But we usually don't sit on the floor once we learn to walk. But for them, it was customary to sit on the floor, so they had a greater flexibility of their joints and could more easily attain these positions that we find either painful or impossible or both. So I don't think it makes much difference, frankly, whether one is sitting in a lotus or a half lotus or some other position, or sitting in a chair or sitting on a cushion. But I do think the emphasis on upright posture of the torso is an important point. There is good evidence that when one sits upright, one is more attentive. And Zazen is all about being attentive. So that effort to learn to sit upright, and it does take some learning. People who are just starting out with sitting meditation find it uncomfortable, sometimes extremely uncomfortable, to sit still upright for a prolonged period of time. And they may need to kind of work into it by using shorter durations of sitting or by supporting their back in some way until they can develop the lower back muscles to the point that they can sit upright unsupported. He goes into detail about whether you should have your eyes closed or open. Again, I think there is some room for discretion there. Some people find it uncomfortable to keep their eyes partly open during meditation. I think the intention is to try to promote awareness and being awake as opposed to falling asleep and getting drowsy. But if you can close your eyes and not get drowsy, I don't think there's any harm in that. How you breathe. Of course, breathing through the nose is desirable. Some people who may just be unable to breathe through their nose, of course, can breathe through their mouth, but for most individuals, it is more settling to breathe through the nose. And not with any special effort, just normal breathing. Arranging the tongue on the roof of the mouth behind the front teeth has a practical purpose. It helps the saliva drain out of your mouth so that you don't accumulate saliva while you're sitting and have to swallow repeatedly. Which, if you're sitting by yourself, I guess that wouldn't make a great deal of difference. But if you're sitting among others and its swallowing is audible, so in any case, it sort of puts the whole thing to rest if you close your mouth and place your tongue up behind your front teeth. The position of the hands, he goes into, although he talks about putting, your right hand on your left foot, which is not what we're usually not in a position where we can do that, unless you are in some sort of full lotus position. But the mudra of the hands, classically for Zazen, is to have the left hand within the palm of the right hand with the thumbs gently touching and settled in your lap. So a right hand, it's hard to get the right angle with this camera, but in any case, that that notion of the thumbs gently touching to make a little circle there with your thumbs and your hands. If that position just seems to put too much strain on your shoulders, you can either put a pillow on your lap to raise your hands a little bit so there's not so much pulling down, or you can keep your hands in some other position. But it's described as the jhana mudra, and it does seem favorable for meditation. So I would encourage you to try that hand position. I think we'll, the next portion of the Fukan Zazenji gets into this whole thing of what is non-thinking. How do you think non-thinking? So we'll save that for next time. But I would like to conclude with just a short reading from Hangzi. Hangzi lived about 100 years before Dogen in China, and Dogen was familiar with Hangzi's writing. He wrote prolifically about what he referred to as silent illumination, which is probably essentially the same thing as Zazen, as Dogen practices it. Hangzi's writing is poetic, so it should be received that way. This little section is called The Mind Ground Dharma Field and the Single Seed. The field of bright spirit is an ancient wilderness that does not change. With boundless eagerness, wander around this immaculate, wide plain. The drifting clouds embrace the mountain. The family wind is relaxed and simple. The autumn waters display the moon in its pure brightness. Directly arriving here, you will be able to recognize the mind-ground Dharma field that is the root source of the 10,000 forms germinating with unwithered fertility. These flowers and leaves are the whole world. So we are told that a single seed is an uncultivated field. Do not weed out the new shoots, and the self will flower. So I think we can stop there for today, and we'll break up into groups, perhaps 3 of them, and